Hey film fans! Welcome to CinePro, your ultimate hub for all movie recaps.
Set, go!
From heartwarming classics to the latest blockbusters, let's dive into the movie, which kicks off with Shadow confined in his containment chamber. This chamber was designed to ensure total containment, but a system malfunction disrupted its operation. Shadow began to stir, gradually regaining memories of moments spent with a girl. Suddenly, he fully awakened. As expected, alarms blared to alert the security team, signaling them to respond quickly and contain the situation. A group of soldiers assembled outside Shadow's chamber, prepared to stop him if he managed to break free. And indeed, Shadow awakened and obliterated the chamber in his escape. The security team had little time to react. Shadow, with his extraordinary speed, began to vanish and reappear unpredictably. No one could track him as he appeared behind each guard, taking them down one by one with unparalleled strength and speed. After neutralizing the guards, he effortlessly demolished the entire building. Upon escaping, Shadow discovered that he had been held in a maximum security prison situated in the middle of the ocean. However, the location was irrelevant to him. With his incredible speed, Shadow ran across the water and made his escape with ease. Meanwhile, we are introduced to the beloved hero cherished by millions, Sonic. Alongside him are his loyal friends, Knuckles and Tails, who were preparing for a race. Their leader, Tom, and his wife, Maddie, were also present, enjoying what seemed to be a peaceful and happy life together. The race began in a flash, with everyone determined to prove they were the fastest. Sonic, noticing the others pulling ahead, decided to unleash his extraordinary speed, crossing the finish line in record time. Just as he prepared to celebrate, he realized the others had already beaten him. Bewildered, he exclaimed, "How?" but graciously accepted his loss and approached them to offer his congratulations. When he touched them, he discovered they were holograms. Startled, Sonic quickly returned to investigate and realized the race had been a distraction. It was all part of a surprise birthday celebration planned just for him. Overwhelmed with joy, Sonic celebrated with his friends, delighted by the unexpected party. At the same time, Shadow arrived in a bustling city, overwhelmed by the sudden crowd and chaos. He glanced at a giant screen displaying the year 2024, and realized that he had been imprisoned for 50 years. Just as he began to process this, he found himself surrounded by an overwhelming number of security forces. Irritated, he addressed them sharply. "What do you think about leaving me alone?" Meanwhile, at Sonic's location, a military plane landed, and a woman emerged, informing them that General Walters urgently needed Sonic's team to handle the chaos in Tokyo. Sonic was thrilled at the idea of being sought out by the military for a rescue mission. Without delay, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles boarded the plane and headed to the location where Shadow was causing havoc. As they jumped from the plane to join the action, a tank was hurled in their direction, but Knuckles quickly intercepted it, catching it as if it were a mere toy. When Shadow noticed their arrival, he approached them, prompting Sonic to ask, "Why do we look alike?" Shadow, uninterested in the question or the answer, had already made up his mind to oppose Sonic the moment he saw him descend from the military plane. Dismissing them, he turned to leave, but Knuckles chose to follow him. Before Shadow could even react, Sonic, utilizing his unparalleled speed, began to toy with him, treating him as if he were insignificant. Shadow retaliated with a devastating attack, but Sonic regrouped his team, preparing for a collective counterattack. However, before they could act, Shadow vanished and reappeared behind them, completely catching them off guard. Displaying his dominance, Shadow overpowered the team with ease and left them defeated before continuing his escape. Determined to stop him, Sonic gave chase. The pursuit was electrifying, with Shadow surpassing the speed of his motorcycle while Sonic pushed his own limits to keep up. Just as Sonic managed to grab hold of the motorcycle, he was shocked to see a train barreling towards them. Yet, in an instant, Shadow disappeared and reappeared on the other side of the train. Sonic, overwhelmed by the intense speed, grew dizzy. When he finally regained his bearings, he was stunned to find himself handcuffed by Shadow without even noticing it happen. This encounter revealed the unimaginable extent of Shadow's speed, leaving Sonic in awe. When Tails and Knuckles arrived, Sonic quipped, "I handcuffed myself for technical reasons I can't explain right now." Determined to uncover more about Shadow, the team sought out General Walters for answers. The general began recounting Shadow's story, explaining, "Dory, when you arrived on this planet, you found someone to care for you and felt safe here. But sadly, when Shadow came, he encountered nothing but betrayal, hatred, and destruction. He continued, revealing that Shadow had arrived on Earth 50 years earlier on a meteor. Discovered by humans as a child, Shadow's extraordinary powers drew the attention of scientists who subjected him to relentless experiments. They sought to understand and exploit his abilities, using him for industrial purposes and even as a potential source of energy. One fateful day, during a demonstration of his powers, Shadow accidentally triggered a massive explosion that destroyed the laboratory, resulting in numerous fatalities. This incident marked the beginning of Shadow's deep mistrust and resentment toward humanity. As a result, the government stepped in, arresting the project leader and imprisoning Shadow. Consumed by fear of his uncontrollable powers, they resorted to torturing him in an attempt to understand and suppress his abilities. Eventually, they made the decision to seal him in a preservation capsule, designed to keep him in eternal slumber. The general, who had been responsible for overseeing Shadow's containment mission, confessed that Shadow hadn't escaped on his own. Someone had deliberately awakened him and facilitated his escape, although they had no clue who it could have been. Only a select few even knew of Shadow's existence. In the midst of their conversation, Sonic suddenly noticed an alarming number of robots surrounding them, poised to attack. Acting swiftly, he alerted everyone and managed to save the general from an incoming missile. As they recovered, they realized they were completely surrounded on all sides. Out of nowhere, a mysterious figure on a motorcycle appeared. Without saying a word, the stranger launched an attack on the robots, using electricity to paralyze them and render them immobile. Without introducing himself, the enigmatic individual vanished as quickly as he had appeared. Sonic noticed that the general had been injured and rushed to assist him. The general, struggling to stay conscious, handed Sonic a card saying, "This is the key to the Army's most powerful weapon. You're the only one who can protect it." With those words, the general passed out. As the sound of approaching military forces grew louder, Sonic and his team disappeared from the scene. When the soldiers arrived, they searched the unconscious general, desperately looking for the weapon's key. Instead, they discovered a picture of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. The commanding officer, furious and suspicious, declared, "I knew they were responsible for all this destruction." Meanwhile, Tails asked Sonic, "Why are we running? Isn't the Army supposed to be our ally?" Sonic responded firmly, "From now on, we won't trust anyone until we gather all the information we need." To begin, they pursued the motorcyclist and eventually caught up with him. They discovered that he was the same individual who had served as Dr. Eggman's assistant in the previous installment. The key moment came when he reassured them, saying, "Don't worry, I'm not here to fight," and invited them out of the sea, adding, "Come with me so I can prove to you that the doctor wasn't guilty." This led to the revelation of Dr. Eggman, who, after losing his job, had spent his days eating incessantly, to the point where his belly had grown to resemble a drum. Naturally, Sonic was taken aback when he saw Eggman drumming on his own belly in such an unflattering manner, and his friends shared his shock. Eggman, on the other hand, was equally startled to see Sonic, his sworn enemy, standing before him. However, his assistant intervened, stating that their rivalry was not the issue at hand. The assistant then presented a videotape that showed numerous small robots, created by Dr. Eggman, attacking Sonic. He explained that someone was orchestrating events to drag them into a conflict that wasn't theirs. Without hesitation, Dr. Eggman resolved to return to work, but this time as an ally to Sonic. Meanwhile, the first thing Shadow did after his escape was visit the lab that had exploded due to his powers. He stood there somberly, staring at the ruins, until his eyes fell upon a shoe that triggered a memory. The sight brought back thoughts of a girl who had been his friend, the first human he encountered after awakening from the meteor that had brought him to Earth. She had been a kind and cheerful person, and her warmth quickly endeared her to Shadow. Their friendship blossomed into something beautiful, as her acceptance of him made him feel safe on a planet that had otherwise shown him nothing but hostility. For Shadow, nothing else mattered as long as she was by his side. One evening, she took him out of the lab to gaze at the stars together, and asked if he remembered anything about where he came from. He admitted that he had no recollection of his homeland, and asked her if she thought he was a danger to humans. She responded, "No, of course not." He confided, "You're the only one who feels that way. All the scientists in the lab look at me with fear, as if I'm a bomb ready to explode." She reassured him, saying, "You're my friend. I'm not afraid of you, and I believe there is goodness in your heart." He was suddenly pulled out of these memories by the sound of a voice behind him. Turning to see who it was, he found the professor responsible for the lab that had exploded. The professor told him that he had been expecting him. Meanwhile, the group decided to split up to search the area more efficiently. Eggman suggested to Sonic, Come with me so we can learn to trust each other a little." Sonic agreed, saying, "You're right." They paired off, each going in a different direction. As Eggman and his assistant walked, they felt the presence of someone behind them. Turning around, they were startled to see Shadow flying silently behind them. His sudden appearance terrified them, causing both to scream. In another part of the lab, Eggman and Sonic discovered pictures of Shadow with his friend, the girl. Sonic found the idea heartwarming, that Shadow had someone who cared for him like family. But before anyone could react further, Shadow suddenly attacked Sonic without warning, declaring, "I warned you many times to stay out of my way." And just as abruptly as he had appeared, Shadow vanished, leaving the group stunned. Eggman, unable to keep up, decided to continue his search. Eventually, he stumbled upon his robots, which had been stolen by the professor. He was elated to find them but had no time to celebrate, as the professor suddenly entered the room. Without hesitation, Eggman activated his robots to attack, but the professor stopped him, saying, "I'm not here for a battle. I borrowed your robots to bring you here for the sake of our family. I am your grandfather, Gerald Robotnik." At first, Eggman was skeptical and refused to believe him. However, the striking resemblance between them and the secret details Gerald shared about Eggman left no room for doubt. Eggman reluctantly accepted the truth. Gerald was indeed his grandfather, and they were family. This revelation filled Eggman with joy, and he eagerly asked, "Where have you been all my life?" Gerald replied, "I was imprisoned in a secret prison for over 50 years. Now I intend to take revenge and reclaim what is rightfully mine." He convinced Eggman to join him in planning this revenge. Together, they approached Sonic, who was chained alongside his team. Gerald demanded the weapon's key from Sonic, but Sonic, attempting to outwit him, replied, "Do you think I'm foolish enough to bring it here?" Without a word, Shadow reached into Sonic's pocket and effortlessly retrieved the key. The weapon in question had originally been designed by Gerald during his time in prison. He had secured his release by handing over the weapon's plans to the military. It was a satellite-like device that orbited Earth and possessed the capability to deliver devastatingly precise strikes anywhere on the planet. Now that the weapon and one key were in Gerald's possession, he set his sights on using it to exact his revenge. However, the weapon required 2 keys to operate, and the second key was secured at military headquarters. Eggman assured Gerald, "Don't worry, I'll help you get the second key." As they prepared to leave, Sonic made a desperate attempt to convince Shadow not to assist them. But Shadow, indifferent to Sonic's pleas, activated a weapon resembling a black hole. The weapon began to pull everything around it into its vortex, creating a scene of chaos. Sonic and his friends narrowly escaped being consumed by the gravitational force, saving themselves at the last possible moment. When they finally emerged, they turned back to witness the terrifying sight of the entire area vanishing into the black hole. Gerald, Eggman, and Shadow watched the destruction unfold, convinced that they had eliminated Sonic and his friends. Eggman, ecstatic, turned to his grandfather and said proudly, "In one moment you achieved what I've been trying to do for years." With their confidence bolstered, the duo set off for the military headquarters to retrieve the second key. Meanwhile, Sonic used a portal to return to Tom and Maddie, seeking their help in infiltrating the heavily guarded headquarters. The facility was protected by a shield capable of incinerating anyone who approached it, necessitating a legal entry to disable the barrier from within. Tom and Maddie were tasked with this critical part of the plan. Recognizing the daunting nature of the mission, Maddie suggested that Sonic use the emerald that grants him the power to transform into his golden form. She believed this would give him the strength he needed to succeed in their perilous endeavor. Sonic rejected the idea of using the emerald, citing its terrifying power and the danger it posed if mishandled. Knuckles interjected, saying, "I'm the only one who knows where the emerald is, and it's impossible for anyone to get close to it. We'll have to rely on our own efforts without relying on extraordinary powers." With this decision made, the group traveled together to London to execute their plan. They divided their tasks. Tom and Maddie would handle the external security, Tails would manage the traps, and Sonic's job was to steal the second key swiftly. The plan also included a contingency for destroying the headquarters roof to ensure Sonic's escape. To facilitate their entry, they accused Maddie of using devices to alter their appearances, making them look like part of the security team. The deception worked, allowing them to enter the building without suspicion. Maddie then disguised herself further to assist General Walters by accessing a secure room with her fingerprint. However, complications arose when the person Maddie was impersonating showed up unexpectedly. Acting quickly, they managed to evade detection and continued their mission. Once inside the control room, they inserted a flash drive, enabling Tails to hack the system. While doing so, they discovered another flash drive, which turned out to belong to Dr. Eggman. At the same time, Eggman and his grandfather Gerald were sneaking into the facility, while their assistant remained outside with Shadow. Inside their hiding spot in the sewage system, Eggman and Gerald discussed their plan. "When we get the second key, we will rule the world," Gerald declared. Shadow, however, responded coldly. "When we get the second key, there won't be a world left to rule." Eggman, unsettled by Shadow's grim tone, replied, "That's a very dark thought," and asked him what he truly intended to do with Gerald. Before Shadow could answer, they heard Tails approaching their location. Suddenly, water surged through the sewage system with immense force, sweeping them far from their hiding spot and away from the field. Eggman and his grandfather finally reached the laser. Gerald, looking concerned, asked, "What do we do now?" Without any warning, Eggman shoved his grandfather straight into the laser. Gerald panicked, flailing his arms and dancing in fear, convinced he had met his end. Moments later, he realized the laser hadn't harmed him. Eggman smirked and said, "I designed this suit to resist lasers, but I needed to test it on you first." Gerald, regaining his composure, looked at Eggman with pride and declared, "You're the perfect villain to inherit my legacy. A heartless, corrupt son I can brag about to my evil peers. Your corruption is something to be proud of." The two of them began dancing in the middle of the laser, creating a ridiculous and over-the-top duet, their bellies wobbling in sync as they celebrated their shared villainy. Meanwhile, Tails, monitoring the scene through security cameras, saw their antics and quickly informed Sonic that Eggman and Gerald were getting closer to their goal. Sonic, impatient as always, decided not to wait for Tails to disable the traps and chose to act immediately. With Tails' assistance, he narrowly avoided the first obstacle just in time and managed to confront Eggman before he could grab the key. Eggman made a desperate attempt to snatch the key, but the gravity in the room suddenly intensified, pulling both him and his grandfather to the ground and immobilizing them. Sonic rushed to retrieve the key, but to his surprise, the gravity beneath him was completely nullified. He began to float helplessly, unable to move or use his speed. At that moment, General Walter's assistant entered the scene, smirking triumphantly. "Thank you for falling into my trap," she said. Soldiers quickly surrounded the area, capturing Tails, Tom, and Maddie. With a sinister tone, she announced, "You will all serve me forever." Sonic communicated with Knuckles via radio, signaling that it was time for him to act. Knuckles unleashed his full strength, striking the building from above, shattering the glass shield, and launching an assault on Walter's assistant. He seized the device controlling the gravity in the area and attempted to free Sonic by destroying it. However, this caused the entire floor to react chaotically, sending some objects and people flying while pinning others to the ground. The assistant tried to reach the key but was pulled down by the gravity alongside it. The key ended up between her and Eggman, and both began crawling desperately toward it, each determined to claim it first. The gravity's intensity caused the ceiling's metal to bend downward, forming spear-like protrusions. If anyone fell, they risked being impaled. Sonic, unable to move due to the intense gravitational force, noticed a large rock about to fall on them. Summoning every ounce of strength, he managed to save them just in time. In the process, he destroyed the gravity control device, returning everything to normal. With gravity restored, the assistant quickly grabbed the key before Eggman could and attempted to escape. However, Tom, disguised as General Walters, intercepted her and commanded her to hand over the key. Intimidated, she complied and handed it over. As she walked away, Tom informed his team that he had secured the key. Before Tom could leave, Shadow appeared before him. Shadow's hatred for General Walters, who had imprisoned him in the capsule, consumed him. Without hesitation, he attacked Tom with all his fury and strength. The assault left Tom unconscious. Shadow took the key from him, but as he was about to leave, he realized Tom's disguise had vanished. Shocked, Shadow discovered that the person he attacked was not Walters. At that moment, Sonic arrived and saw Tom lying unconscious with Shadow standing beside him. Rushing to his friend, Sonic tried to revive Tom, but his efforts were in vain. Shadow stood silently, his expression heavy with regret, as memories of his own loss resurfaced. Standing next to his only friend, next the girl, trying to revive her after she died in an explosion. Breaking the silence, Shadow said, "What have you done?" Sonic, his voice firm, replied, "What I had to do," before vanishing from the scene. Maddie, Tails, and Knuckles arrived to check on Tom, whose condition remained uncertain. Meanwhile, the authorities apprehended Eggman and his grandfather, who had already surrendered. However, Shadow intervened at the last moment, eliminating all the surrounding forces and handing the second key to them. He then escorted them to the weapons control device. Once there, Gerald revealed to Eggman that he had designed specialized suits for both of them. After putting on the suits, Eggman's assistant emerged from the water and urgently contacted Eggman, warning him that Gerald was deceiving him and harbored far darker intentions than Eggman could fathom. Eggman, dismissing his assistant as a traitor, refused to listen and returned to his grandfather to proceed with their plans. They activated the weapon, which surfaced from the depths of the sea for the first time, fully operational and ready to unleash destruction. An ambulance arrived to take Tom to the hospital, with Maddie accompanying him. Sonic, overwhelmed with grief and anger, resolved that he must stop Eggman and Gerald and avenge his friend at any cost. He turned to Knuckles and demanded the emerald, but Knuckles refused, saying, "You can't use it for revenge. Doing so will consume the goodness in your heart." Sonic, determined, declared that if Knuckles wouldn't give him the emerald willingly, he would take it by force. A fierce battle ensued, with Knuckles nearly overpowering Sonic. However, Knuckles ultimately relented, saying, "We must trust each other. I must honor my promise, even if you break yours." He handed over the emerald but warned Sonic, "To use it, you must first defeat the terrifying warrior who guards it. He is incredibly powerful and wields the emerald as if it were a mere hockey puck." Sonic went to face the warrior. Upon meeting him, Sonic said, "Take it for yourself." The warrior replied, "I can't. My life has been dedicated to protecting it." Despite this, Sonic managed to take the emerald from him. Harnessing its power, he transformed into Super Sonic. Using his newfound abilities, Sonic unleashed all his speed to reach the weapon, which had already launched into space. He began preparing the weapon to be disabled, knowing that every second counted to prevent catastrophic destruction. As Sonic reached the critical moment, he confronted Gerald, asking if this destruction was truly what Maria, his companion, would have wanted. Gerald coldly replied, "I'm not doing this to fulfill Maria's wish. I'm doing this because these people deserve destruction." Gerald walked away, lost in thought, remembering a moment when he had burst into a room where Shadow was playing with Maria. He had told them urgently, "Move quickly to escape from here. They want to take you away." They attempted to flee, but security forces pursued them, prepared to open fire. General Walters tried to intervene, pleading with the soldiers to hold their fire because there was a child with them. Despite his efforts, a stray shot struck a cluster of explosive containers, triggering a massive explosion. Maria was caught in the blast and died, though her death wasn't caused by those they had initially blamed. When Shadow recalled these agonizing memories, his rage consumed him entirely. Determined to exact his revenge on humanity, he began circling the weapon at incredible speed, pushing it to its maximum power. Watching the events unfold, Eggman turned to his grandfather in shock and said, "You're going to destroy the planet." Gerald, unshaken, replied, "That's the goal. I want revenge on everyone. Not just the planet will be destroyed, even we will die with it." Eggman, horrified, protested, "Destroy the planet? That's insane. I wanted to rule it, not destroy it." At that moment, Shadow approached them and announced, "The weapon is ready. The launch codes are set, and it will fire in 10 minutes. Shadow was driven by the belief that he was delivering justice for his only companion, Maria. As they stood amidst the chaos, something small and impossibly fast appeared on the horizon. In the blink of an eye, Sonic arrived, seizing Shadow and dragging him into space to confront him alone. Sonic declared, "I'm going to destroy you, just as you hurt my family." Shadow countered, "You're taking revenge, just like I'm avenging the death of my family." Their battle escalated as they plummeted back to Earth at full speed, creating a massive and terrifying explosion upon impact. Shadow appeared behind Sonic, landing a devastating blow that nearly separated the emerald from Sonic's grasp. Sonic, realizing the danger, rushed to retrieve it, but Shadow moved just as quickly. In the decisive moment, both of them reached for the emerald simultaneously, their fates intertwined. Both Sonic and Shadow transformed into their super forms, becoming Super Sonic and Super Shadow. It quickly became evident that Super Shadow was significantly stronger than Super Sonic, relentlessly attacking him. Sonic struggled to gather his strength, resisting with all his might. Their battle was ferocious and destructive, as they moved at unimaginable speeds. Their movements were so intense that they became visible even to Gerald and Eggman from space. Seizing the moment when Gerald was distracted, Eggman struck him on the neck to knock him unconscious. Eggman hurriedly attempted to stop the weapon's launch, but Gerald, regaining consciousness, flew after him, resulting in a fierce confrontation. Meanwhile, the climactic battle between Sonic and Shadow continued to intensify. Shadow was on the verge of defeating Sonic when Sonic suddenly remembered Tom, who was fighting for his life. Fueled by anger and determination, Sonic unleashed a powerful attack on Shadow, hitting him with such force that Shadow was sent flying from one planet to another. When Shadow finally regained consciousness, he realized that the emerald had left his body, reverting him to his normal form. Super Sonic, still in his super state, approached Shadow and grabbed him. Sonic had the opportunity to deliver a finishing blow but chose not to. Holding Shadow firmly, Sonic said, "I'm not like that." Shadow, humbled, responded, "You've defeated me. Take your revenge and claim your right." Sonic, with wisdom, replied, "No one wins by taking revenge." Shadow looked up at the sky, gazing at the stars, and recalled Maria. He said softly to Sonic, "The last time I sat under the stars like this, I was with her. All I've known since then is pain." Sonic, empathizing, replied, "When I lost Longclaw, I felt pain too, but I realized that love is stronger than pain. The love I shared with my family was greater than the pain of losing her. I never let revenge consume me." As the sun began to rise, bathing them in a warm glow, the two sat together on the moon, looking toward Earth. In that serene moment, they reconciled and forged a friendship. Shadow admitted that everything that had happened had been a mistake. Sonic reassured him, saying, "You and I will fix it together." Uniting their powers, they transformed into their super forms once more and flew with all their strength toward the weapon to prevent it from destroying Earth. Tragically, Gerald had already destroyed the systems that could stop the launch. Barely able to stand, Gerald watched as Sonic and Shadow entered together. A massive army of robots confronted them, attempting to stop their advance. For Sonic and Shadow, these machines were merely a warm-up, and they dispatched them with ease. In a shocking move, Gerald opened a hatch to throw Eggman into space, reveling in his cruelty. However, Eggman intervened at the last moment, saving his grandson and, instead, throwing Gerald into the weapon's core, where he presumably met his end. Sonic gathered the remaining robots, luring them into traps and destroying them effortlessly. Finally, Sonic and Shadow confronted the weapon's projectile just in time, using their combined strength to stop it from colliding with Earth. Unable to hold it for long, they called upon Eggman and Tails for assistance. When it became clear they couldn't stop the weapon, they redirected it away from Earth, sparing the planet but causing the moon to split in half. Exhausted from the ordeal, Sonic began falling toward Earth at an alarming speed. Tails, seeing this, pleaded with Knuckles for a ring to open a portal. Knuckles, holding his last ring, chose to use it wisely. He threw Tails toward Earth with all his strength to reach Sonic more quickly. Meanwhile, the weapon started breaking apart, threatening to rain destruction on Earth. Shadow asked Eggman to help stabilize it for as long as possible while he worked to push it further away. Tails, descending at such high speed that his body temperature began to rise dangerously, finally caught up to Sonic, saving him just in time. Super Shadow, mustering every ounce of his remaining strength, managed to push the weapon farther away from Earth. In his final moments, Eggman expressed heartfelt regret to his assistant, apologizing for not listening to him sooner. Watching the broadcast, the assistant was deeply moved by Eggman's words as the battle came to its dramatic conclusion. Shadow continued pushing the weapon with all his strength as it began to disintegrate. Meanwhile, Tails, after catching Sonic, succumbed to exhaustion and lost consciousness, leaving him unable to open the portal. Knuckles quickly intervened, reviving both Sonic and Tails just in time to open the portal before the weapon exploded. The weapon's explosion created a breathtaking galaxy-like image in the sky, illuminating space with a mix of colors and energy. Eggman and the others watched the spectacle from a distance, assuming that Sonic and Shadow had perished in the explosion. Through the portal, Tails, Sonic, and Knuckles landed safely in a farmland, completely unharmed by the fall. When they awoke, they gazed at the sky, filled with the stunning remnants of the explosion. Sonic, having let go of the anger in his heart, turned to Knuckles and Tails, apologizing for the harsh words he had spoken earlier. He sincerely asked for their forgiveness, which they readily gave. Eggman's assistant, staring at the explosion in the distance, silently bid farewell to Eggman before walking away, his fate unknown. Meanwhile, the group reunited with joy, their happiness magnified when Tom returned to them, fully recovered. To celebrate, they decided to race again to determine who was truly the fastest. The story concludes with the hope that the audience enjoyed the adventure. A heartfelt request follows. Please support us by subscribing to the channel, giving a nice like, and activating the bell button. Thank you for your time.